imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al al-Maghrib, muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid al-Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-Maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid al-Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-Maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid al-Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-Maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid al-Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-Maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid al-Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhajara. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada Maghrib, muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham
أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم أيها المستمعون الكرام. وقبل الكلام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. And to our dear listeners all over the globe, welcome back again to Alhaajar TV, the #1 leading Islamic station right here in Kenya. And today we are honored to be joined by one of the well-informed, renowned Islamic scholar based in United Kingdom and the founder of Mustafa Academy. Sheikh, welcome.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Abdurrahman, right?
Naam, aywa. Who is Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud?
Before we get there,
Naam.
something to mention to you in regards to a well-renowned scholar.
Naam.
I will tell you personally, I'm not a scholar. I'm a student of knowledge.
Oh, mashallah.
There are scholars that existed before us,
Naam.
and there are those who exist with us, but we are not them. All right.
But why didn't you like this term scholar?
A scholar is a big word, especially in the 21st century that we live in. Particularly, reason being is because if you look at a scholar, what's required to become a scholar, the 21st century cannot prepare one. So as we live in the 21st century with our literally restricted knowledge, how do you reach to that level? And there are two types of scholars anyways. There's a scholar that literally is very good in al-ilm al-shari'i, and the scholars literally, they pass that level. When they exceed that level, they go down to al-ilm al-laduni. Al-ilm al-laduni is that which, once al-ilm al-shari'i becomes part of your life, then now you have this divine connection between you and Allah. Now there's two types of scholars when it comes to that.
For our dear followers who is hearing you for the first time,
Yes.
you might be willing to know who is this Sheikh, where does he come from, his background, yeah.
Well, for me, that's a tricky question because I don't really like explaining about myself. Simply put, if you ask me about myself, I'll just tell you my name.
No, mashallah.
But because you want to know perhaps in terms of where I've studied, where I come from and all of that, I'm born in Kenya actually, in reality.
Mashallah.
But when I was around 2 years old, I left the country. And at my peak age, Sinnul Murahiqa basically means that my teen age, I came back to this country again, and I did majority of my studies here. But then after about 12 years, 14 years if I'm not wrong, I went back again to the UK, like that. So I have more or less of a divide of life, half here, half there.
So you have both experience here in
Yes.
Kenya and there in UK. Wow, amazing. Sheikh, unfortunately, before we venture into our today critical topics, yesterday, 14th of February, was Valentine's Day. I hope you know about it. And A very sad thing that I would like you to share with us. Many Muslim couples all over the world who seem to be celebrating. What the religious take on such issues?
If we want to take on, then it's simple as saying it's haram. But the answer for the world that we live in the modern age, you cannot just conclude and say Valentine's is haram, because the reality is, you and I know that Valentine's is haram, right? Majority of the Muslims, they are not shallow enough in their deen that they don't know if Valentine's is haram. And those who are acting on this are literally the youth. You ask the youth sincerely, they will tell you that it is haram. But yet they still do what? Transgress on things that Allah regards them as His boundaries. We only al-Eid عندنا عيدان بس عيد الفطر عيد الأضحى, isn't it? But the question that should be given over here, or maybe posed, is why are they celebrating Valentine's? What gives them that audacity to celebrate Valentine's? What makes them think Valentine's Day is a day of celebration even within the Muslim nation? That's the question that we should ask ourselves.
And despite them knowing that Valentine's is around, they are continuing celebrating. What are the consequences?
The consequences are far deeper than that. The reality is, if you look at the Muslim Ummah today, when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the hadith, لَتُنْقَضَنَّ عُرَى الْإِسْلَامِ حُكْمًا. Basically, it's going to start with hukm. The rulers, they're not going to exist until it's going to go all the way down to salah. It means the very basis and the foundation of Islam is going to be torn apart, separated and severed between the Muslim and this salah. If they understood what salah actually meant, then Valentine's Day wouldn't have really had significance, and perhaps they would have fought for this day to be removed in their lives. That's how it works.
Let's just stick here. Nowadays we are in the digital era, and unfortunately there are many Muslims couple hanging out there, showing out their life on social media platform. What's your take on this? What the Islamic religious take on this?
How many takes do I have to give?
You know, these are the things that are affecting us. So
I know. I understand, yeah. These topics are very broad, to be honest. The reason being is because regardless of how far we will go and start mentioning, providing solutions, yet we're not going back to the main solution that's required. Social media does not have a problem with anyone.
So for you want to say that, is it correct for couples to expose themselves, their lifestyle, like they're going out, hang out, dinner, yeah, today I'm with my wife here, you get the world to see?
Let me ask you this.
Now.
When it comes to right and wrong,
Now.
do you judge by your feelings, or do you judge according to what Allah wants?
We judge according to Allah.
Is that the case in this era that we have?
Tricky question. But there's something about Islamic privacy and modesty.
Many don't. What is right and wrong is literally subjective. CD. If we want to talk about what is right and what is wrong, we have to first understand what drove that person to start literally posting their lives in social media. As I said, social media does not have a problem, nor does the internet have an issue. But what made them take social media to the negative side and commit that which they were not supposed to do? Islam does talk about privacy, and that's the main part of our lives. You have to literally maintain your private life and not expose yourself. That's number one. And number two, you have to make sure that whatever you can hide and literally seal and keep to yourself, you do it at the best of your ability. But that's not the case, right? In this day and age. What makes them do that? That they willingly post their lives. Because if we literally talk about social media, we talk about Valentine's Day, we talk about all of these other problems that are happening, they do not really mention the actual problem itself.
To our dear followers who are continually joining us, just stay tuned. Also, we have more hot topics and conversation that we'll get here with Ustad. Ustad, education for community development. What is community development education? And I've heard that you are an educationalist.
I am not an educationalist, by the way.
So why are you refusing education?
I'll tell you why.
No.
The term educationalist, in the modern term, is used in a very subjective, negative manner. It doesn't mean what you and I think. Simply put, let me tell you why. If we talk about an educationalist, it's like you want to talk about the economist or the politician. How do we look at politics specifically today? Understood? How do we look at an economist today? Understood? If you say educationalist, then you're referring to the education of the nation. Who determines the education? The state, not you and I. Education is dictated by the state. That's a fact, whether you like it or not. I saw on the news recently that children are to be taught how to vote for their leaders. That's what I saw. Question is, why should they learn about that? Understood?
No.
Why should they learn about that? Who is the one that dictates that type of education? So if we talk about education to change the community, the matter is far deeper than that. Reason being is because, look, education, al-ilmu yanqasim ila aqsam. And if we talk about modern day education, هذا ما نسميه على حسب الحبيب صلى الله عليه وسلم العلم المقبوض. دائما عندما نقرأ النصوص, when we read these what is it? Allah al-Musta'an, the nusus, the text. When we read the text not according to the times that we live in. We actually read the text in accordance to our understanding, which we have received from our own either parents or teachers or our community at large. Al-ilm al-maqbud is the type of knowledge. إن الله لا يقبض العلم انتزاعا ينتزعه من الناس. When Allah said لا يقبض العلم, He is not going to remove and pluck out knowledge. You have to look at the word qabd as well. Why is it used? Al-Habib Abu Bakr al-Mashhur rahmatullahi alayh and Sheikh Ahmed Sa'd al-Azhari hafidhahullah clearly mentioned this. Al-ilm al-maqbud is not knowledge which is removed by the death of the scholars. A scholar can die, but Allah in every 100 years, every century, He replaces for the ummah and brings within the ummah a scholar that literally can save the ummah from damar and halak. Understood? So when we talk about ilm al-maqbud, it's literally restricted knowledge. Knowledge which literally serves a certain agenda, but not knowledge that literally serves a community. And because of this, if we talk about knowledge and the community, or education and the community, we will not come to an end. Our children go to school. That brings in the other issue of employment right now, which I believe you wanted to bring in.
Our education system is okay.
If you ask me, the Kenyan education system, that is the wrong question.
Why?
Because I'll tell you, this is a global matter, whether we like it or not. It's a global aspect.
So the unemployment crisis is not only affecting Kenyans.
I live in the UK, CD.
Yep.
If you look at the people that literally are how they live over there, I mentioned this on a khutbah, I'm going to mention it again over here. Simply put, you go to study engineering, by the time you finish, you're an engineer. You should have a high post, isn't it?
Yep.
But your salary is about 25 to 27,000 pounds, around there. Maybe you have a wife and a kid. In those 27,000, the state will literally deduct 20%. If you do the math easily, 2,700 times 2, how much is that? Easily 5,400. 27,000 reduce 5,400, how much do you have? 22,600. As simple as it is. 22,600, you have to pay rent. Your rent, how much is it? 1,200 for one bed. And I'm saying you and your wife without a child. And maybe you have a child. 1,200 every single month you're paying on rent. If you do the calculation, you end up finding that in a year, you're literally paying at least 15,000 in rent. Understood? You haven't paid a bill because there's something called council tax. You haven't paid for your phone. You haven't paid for anything else. All right? This is the education that many of our children go for in schools, and they attain papers that claims for them they have a profession, and then they expect to receive something. From whom are they expecting? That's the question. Ask yourself that. إشغال المخ أهم شيء. There's an athar of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he mentions it clearly. For you to sit down, كونك تجلس ساعة تفكر في الله تبارك وتعالى أعظم من النوافل التي تقوم بها. The fact that you sit for 1 hour and you literally use your mind is far greater than doing those nafl that you're doing. Is there anything wrong with the nafl? No. وَيُنْدَبُ النَّفْلُ فَوَاظِبْ فِعْلَهُ. You have to do a nafl and you have to literally have mudawama on it. You have to live with it. But then, if you do not sit down and think and you contemplate and you ponder, you'll always be distracted. And distraction is the first thing that the modern age has served us on a plate.
So the education system all over the globe is a mess. Because we are just brought up, you go to school,
I would tell you personally,
school, you get employed, and from the calculation that you've just brought up, amazing.
I want to back up my statement with a fact so that I don't really hurt a lot of hearts, number one. And I don't, no, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Is there any higher degree than a PhD? No. PhD then professor. But you don't earn the professor title by having another certificate. You earn the professor title after the PhD and after you've done a lot of research. All right?
Yeah.
Now let me tell you something. Many of us go to school, we attain our PhDs and we study home, Al-Imam al-Shafi'i. In Cambridge University, I wouldn't talk about Kenyan universities. I'll talk about my own universities where I come from. All right? In case. Cambridge University, you go there, you study Al-Imam al-Ghazali, the Imam al-Ghazali, who wrote Al-Ihya Ulum al-Din. And he wrote a very small text, which every talib ilm, a student of knowledge, a sincere student of knowledge, must study and go through Ayyuha al-Walad, lil-Imam al-Ghazali. Oh beloved son, if you do not read Ayyuha al-Walad, your etiquettes of seeking knowledge will be flawed. And it's a very small text, literally 60 pages. But when you think you understand it, you will need a sheikh to break it down for you. Understood?
I just told
I haven't,
you to go there to simply.
I haven't got to my point yet.
Yeah.
We go to university, finish your PhD, you study Al-Imam al-Ghazali.
No.
In the study that you do for Al-Imam al-Ghazali, you've only read a few pages of every single text that Al-Imam al-Ghazali has written. All right? Question yourself this. In our deen, if we talk about 200 years ago, this was the system. The education system was like this. This is not the education system which I'm mentioning to you in regards to there were institutions. There were no such thing as institutions. Knowledge was borderless. Knowledge was everywhere. In the house, in the masjid, in the school, and in your workplace. You might be working side to side with your sheikh. You might be working side to side with students of knowledge, whether you like it or not. But then ask yourself this, how do you write poetry in Arabic? I was saying this a few days ago. How much does it take you for you to write poetry? Al-Arabiyyatu tanqasimu ila 12 aqsam. Arabic divides to 12 subjects. And I'll mention only 6. You need al-nahwu, wal-sarfu, wal-insha'u, al-balagha, al-adabu, and at the same time you need al-ilm al-urud, al-qawafi. These are 7. I'll remove adab, although you do need adab. These are 6, mathalan, isn't it? For you to be able to write only one line of poetry, you need to study these subjects in and out. And I'll leave you there.
What drove you to start Mustafa's Academy, and tell us more about the Academy?
I sincerely started Mustafa's Academy for one main reason.
No.
We live in an era where we're not fighting to revive. We are fighting to maintain and at least keep alive the reminiscences of that which was part of our golden era. That's the reality. When I say that, هذا الدين كان الدين عقيدة وهذه الأمة كانت أمة العقيدة. It was an ummah of عقيدة. an ummah that was in love of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. That's the honest truth. And when we mention this, it sounds very easy to understand. But the reality is the love of Allah is only instilled in children, in the house, in the society, and even under the state that they live in. The term state is literally a new phenomenon, honestly speaking. Understood? So when we mention Mustafa's Academy, I literally established it so that at the very least, if not every child and every adult would want to study about their deen, they could at least preserve what has been preserved from our deen. And that is to at least remember Allah. And remembering Allah, you cannot remember Allah unless you have some certain type of knowledge. You have to have, there's literally a threshold that every Muslim should have, which ma'al asaf today, majority of the Muslims don't. Because simply put, people, if you ask them how to fix their salah, they don't have any idea of that.
But you're facing a lot of challenges there because the community, so how do you come out with it?
Facing challenges is normal. وَهَكَذَا كَانَ الْأَنْبِيَاء. The prophets were like that. Do you think Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala anzala Surah Hud for any other purpose besides telling Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you might think you've lost a battle because you're fighting day and night in Mecca trying to save your own people and they are against you. Whereas I am sending to you وَكُلًّا نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الرُّسُلِ مَا نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. And the كُلًّا, this كُلًّا, الكل حكمنا على المجموع ككل ذاك ليس ذا وقوع. For those who study mantiq, they understand the word kul, which is a term literally thrown around randomly and in the most negative way. I'll tell you why. When Allah used kul over here, He used kul for every single prophet necessary for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to learn about. He didn't have to mention to him all of the other 124 or 124,999 prophets, because as we know, messengers and prophets, if collectively put together, they are 125,000. Simply put. But when Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala revealed for him Surah Hud, He revealed it to him for a purpose, so that he realizes, yet you're still in a ni'mah. All of these al-umam allati kanat qablak, they are gone. They are washed away. Allah has destroyed them. But you still have time. I haven't destroyed any one of your ummah. So if you think you've lost, or maybe you've been let down, there are others that have suffered more than him. So challenges are part of a Muslim's life, whether we like it or not.
What's your advice to those who are facing challenges, depression? Because some even go to an extent of depression and committing suicide.
I wouldn't want to get to the details in regards to what is causing depression.
Because you've mentioned challenges are there, and we have to overcome challenges. So many people seek alternative way, but what the best way? The Islamic way.
Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, he mentions in a quote, and I forgot part of it, but then he mentions something as al-qana'atu bil-qalil wal-amalu bil-tanzil, and then he mentioned wal-isti'dadu li-yawm al-rahil. He mentioned these few words. I promise you, if us Muslims will literally work on just this one statement, then the modern day problems will literally not become a part of our lives. If a person is facing depression, why are they facing depression anyways? That's the question. And if a person is suffering from any issue that they might be going through, question is, why are they? Why should they go to committing suicide? So what I would tell you personally is, they have to be satisfied with the life they have, and they always have to consider that Allah is with them. This is not an ummah of losing hope. It's not an ummah that has been let down. We have decided to let ourselves down. That's a fact. But if you look at this, if you look at Islam generally, Islam is a deen of hope. So one shouldn't say that I've lost hope and then they decide to take away their lives. And it's all lack of knowledge, lack of the right society, lack of the right company, people that can literally help them and assist them.
So do you think that our community is going in the wrong direction?
If I say our community, that would be wrong. If I say the entire world, then I'll say yes.
Why?
Because majority of what's happening now is basically mukhalafatun nusus, mukhalafatun Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I'll tell you something very simple. Men and women, when it comes to using utur, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says for men, they should only use utur on a Friday. That's why. But women, when they use utur, literally perfume, they can use perfume literally very lightly. Only a person that hugs them can smell it. But if you go literally, I wouldn't even tell you at home, and then you look at the wives of and the husbands, what they're doing. Let's not even go there. Go to the mall today. You know what a mall is? You go to a market. If they're selling perfume, which perfume are they advertising more? Men's perfume or women's perfume? Number one. And if they're selling perfume, what type of perfume are they selling? Are they selling perfume that does not expose itself for women more, or are they selling perfume that literally exposes women more than men? So if the world today is providing that, and women are willing to incline towards it, then what do you think? Is it a global issue, or is it something which is happening only within the community?
MashaAllah, barakallah fiqh. To our dear followers, we'll have a little bit of break because we have a lot to discuss today. We have a lot to discuss, but we'll get in back in a few. Thank you.
Kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii, usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Hudas Paki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhaajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhaajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Hudas Paki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhaajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Umma Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhajara. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al-Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Umma Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhajara. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al-Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back again, our dear follower, to Alhaajar Online TV, the #1 leading Islamic station right here in Kenya. Today we are honored with Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud. We've covered up some topics, but I would like us to go to parenting.
Yes.
Parenting. This has been one of the key crucial issues, especially here in Mombasa, whereby parents have been complaining today's children, the digital era children, are uncontrollable.
In regards to parenting, we know that definitely Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. You do not guide the one that you love, but in fact Allah is the one that guides. But لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ أَسْبَابٍ فَاتَّبَعَ سَبَبًا. Allah says in the Quran,
No.
everything has a reason that follows it. ثُمَّ اتَّبَعَ سَبَبًا ثُمَّ اتَّبَعَ سَبَبًا. Why would he constantly repeat that? It means if we come back to the terms that we can use in accordance to our human abilities, why would a child succeed in one family whereas the other doesn't? Question is, it's not the case always where the child succeeds alone. That is literally 1 in 1,000 maybe.
Yeah.
But majority of the children that succeed, they succeed because of their parents. I can tell you literally, if you see me this far, for the little that Allah has blessed me with, this was the job of my parents. And I can vouch for that day and night. And no one can say otherwise. Everyone around me that lived with me, they know that. It's the parents that started. Whatever I have now, up to today, my father and my mother, they still do dua for me, regardless of how old I am. Because I am a son to them. Which poses the question, in regards to parenting, if we have a problem with our children, what type of love do we have for them? And at the moment, I don't want to go into a modern structure that we have in the world. Is our love sincere towards them, unconditional? Or is it the type of love where we feel we love them, but we are failing them down the line? Because this is how it works. قال الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم, as I said, the pinnacle of every single problem is what? مخالفة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Ummah has done a fine job on doing that. The Ummah has done a fine job on transgressing the words of Rasulullah. فليحذر الذين يخالفون عن أمره أن تصيبهم فتنة أو يصيبهم عذاب أليم. Because when the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم says كل مولود, every single child that is born, يولد على الفطرة, they are born in nature, in a state which is natural. And the natural state of a child is believing in Allah. That is the natural state of a child. Hence you find these funny videos where a young girl would question their own Christian parent. If this is God and God has died, then how do we even have a God alive? Understood? Lakin, what does the Messenger ﷺ say? فَأَبَوَاهُ يُهَوِّدَانِ أو يُنَصِّرَانِ أو يُمَجِّسَانِ. It's not about يُهَوِّدَانِ أو يُنَصِّرَانِ أو يُمَجِّسَانِ. That's not the issue. The issue is for you and I to understand, it's the mindset that you build in the mind. As a parent, you can make your child look like a Christian but holding literally a Muslim name. And these children do pray. You can make your child like a Majus, but they hold a Muslim name and at the same time they still pray and come to the masjid. It's all about how you literally build their mindset. How much are you providing them that security of the mind and preparing them for that? And the very least that perhaps you could do for a child is dua. These are the same parents that don't even do that. If the Messenger ﷺ says that إذا مات ابن آدم انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث. The hadith that I mentioned, they are not unfamiliar. These are literally the most familiar hadith. And I love a hadith which you and I can relate to. Even the normal layman can relate to that. صدقة جارية أو علم ينتفع به أو ولد صالح يدعو له. Do you know what's amazing about this? In order for you to have a child that literally does dua for you, you need to reciprocate. Nothing on this earth works without reciprocity. Bear that in mind. If there is no reciprocity, you cannot. Okay, let me give you a simple example. Someone wants to become rich. If you do not invest money or health or wealth of what you have, do you get to build your business? No, you don't, isn't it? Yeah. If you do not invest in anything that you want to achieve, do you achieve it? No, you don't. But if you do not invest in your children through dua, they are the same children that will forget you tomorrow when it comes to doing dua for you.
And what's your observation, Ustad, about parenting issues, unique challenges faced by parents raising children, especially here in Mombasa today? There is this some sort we call freedom. Freedom. That you should not lock children. Just give them freedom. Is this freedom good under the westernization morals of raising up the children?
You should give children freedom.
But most...
but you have to ask me why.
No. Let me. Most say that when you give the children freedom, you are destroying them.
That's why I said ask me why.
Why?
Why? It's because it's not the freedom that the modern age has given us.
Oh, wow.
You should give children freedom of their minds. It's all in here.
No.
Knowledge is freedom. Being independent is freedom.
It's freedom.
And it's only nurtured in the house. That is freedom. But the modern era would not give you freedom. The modern era's purpose is to enslave you. So if we talk about the modern freedom, then no. But if we talk about freedom as freedom, then yes. It's freedom of the mind and freedom in independence. But you need to build that within them.
MashaAllah. How can religious teachings be incorporated into parenting practices to instill positive values and ethics in children while remaining relevant to their contemporary lives?
Religious teachings, you know, there is something called at-ta'lim and at-ta'allum. وهذا كلام الحبيب أبو بكر رحمة الله عليه. This is not me. And whenever you take something from someone, you have to refer it back to them. That's how the scholars were. There's at-ta'allum wa at-ta'lim. He mentions it differently, but they all stand for the same thing. I would mention it a bit different. At-ta'allum is what you seek as knowledge in order for you to learn from the books. You sit down yourself, you take yourself there and you learn from the sheikhs and that. And then you have something called at-ta'lim ma yu'allimuka al-haya, what life teaches you. Not everyone has a father alive for them to guide them. Not everyone has the right parent for them to be guided. Not everyone has the ability to attain guidance regardless of where they are. But when it comes to religious studies, this deen is not merely preserved in the books. Because if we literally narrow it down to just in the books, do you know what's the next thing you get? We go back to the same modern structure. The modern structure is about study what the books provide you, build a profession, you work for the state, attain a pension, and you die old and poor, weak, not even poor when it comes to wealth. We have associated the word poor. I mentioned this on a talk, if I'm not wrong, or a khutbah. Words have been frequently used until they become so plastic. In the modern era, when you say someone is poor, we literally refer to poverty as in wealth.
Yeah.
But the greatest poverty that mankind is facing today is literally knowledge. So you die, you don't even have wealth as in money, nor do you have wealth of knowledge. That's what the modern era prepares us for. But when it comes to religious studies, the society, community plays a role. The family at home plays a role. The mashayikh play a role. The company that you have around you play a role. Everything around you play a role. Because حتى عندما تنظر إلى الأنبياء والرسل, you notice how many rusul do we have? 313. And the rest of them are whom? Anbiya. Now, there are du'a samitun, and there are du'a mutakallimun. They are literally preachers that literally preach silently. I might sit here today, it's part of my life, I can sit here, talk, and this is Al-Haajar again, he says these words beautifully. This is my ability to talk. But do you know who's the best da'i? The one who does da'wah without even talking. غير ناطق. So when it comes to religious studies are not limited just down to books and that. Religious studies is our entire lives. This deen is our life. Simply put, if you look at a child as they grow up, or let's come to you and I. You enter the house, what do you say? Bismillah walajna, Bismillah kharajna, wa ala rabbina tawakkalna. Hada ilmun shar'i. If you leave the house, what do you say? Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah. When you go to sleep, Bismika Allahumma amutu wa ahya. You wake up, Alhamdulillah, alladhi ahyana, isn't it? You go to the toilet, Bismillah Allahumma inna a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal-khaba'ith. You leave the toilet, ghufranak. And you sit quietly after salah, astaghfirullah. You're constantly in a state of ibadah, isn't it? So it's part of your life. Like you breathe this deen. It's not like this deen is just limited to ilm shar'i, learning in the books. What you learn literally, I'll give you a simple example. ولا تقابل أو تدابر كعبة في المنزل الوطأ أجز والفضلة ونحي ذكر الله حتما في الخلاء واستحسنوا سترا وبعدا في الفلاء ولا تلتفت المزيل واستعد ورجلك اليمنى عليها فاعتمد ورجلك اليسرى عليها فاعتمد. All of these, you notice that in Ashal al-Masalik he mentions to you when you literally go to the toilet, adabu qada il-haja. How do you literally help yourself and relieve yourself in the toilet? It's simply to that level. So question yourself, if it's not part of your life, then what is?
Right now here in Mombasa, there's a very serious issue about parenting. And most of the parents, I can say, is that they are more competent on secular education than religious education. And when you even go to madrasa and you check out on the attendance, you'll find that their attendance is very low. But most of them, they give priority to secular education. I believe this is one of the problems. And today, alhamdulillah, we have you. What the advice and what do you think we should do as Mombasan to change this situation?
Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda, he mentions clearly in a book known as قيمة الزمن عند العلماء. It's one of the finest books. And I would say again, if a student of knowledge has not read this book, then they are losing a lot. They are missing out a lot.
What's the name of the book?
I'll tell you, it's written in Arabic, is known as قيمة الزمن عند العلماء, the value of time to the scholars. A few books a طالب العلم must read. أيها الولد, you have to read that. You also have to read صفحات من صبر العلماء by Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda. قيمة الزمن عند العلماء, same Sheikh again. And another book from his, which I would literally, I can't emphasize enough, especially for the dua today here in Mombasa and Kenya.
No.
This is an issue which I can relate to here mostly, more than where I come from, because over there it's dying down. They must read a book known as Rasailul A'immat al-Salaf. It's a long name, but I could literally refer it to that level, by Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda. So they can learn the adab between the scholars. The Rasail, the letters that were literally written between Al-Imam Malik and Al-Imam Al-Layth ibn Sa'ad. And also another Imam known as Uthman, I forgot his second name. It's not Uthman, Uthman ibn Sa'id. Uthman ibn Sa'id, his nickname is Al-Warsh. When you hear Qira'at Warsh, his name is Uthman ibn Sa'id. His teacher used to call him a lot, Ya Warshan, Ta'al Ya Warshan, Idhab Ya Warshan. Ulama al-Qira'at, they know this. Why would he call him like that? Because he was a bit short, a little bit stacked, and he would wear qumsan, which would literally these thobes. He would wear these thobes which were mulawwana. They have color.
Colored.
Yeah, colored ones.
Yeah.
And because of this, he would come and go. So he looked like a very beautiful bird. So he would call him all the time, Idhab ya Warshan, come ya Warshan, go ya Warshan.
Yeah.
So when his scholar passed away, his Sheikh, he would literally, Arabs, they're literally lazy. That's the reality with the Arabs. Arabs are lazy, and you and I can relate to that. So instead of calling him Warshan, they decided to call him Warsh. So he remained like that. So if you read the Rasail, you notice that how they would interact between one another. The beautiful word, Al-Imam and Al-Nazim Muhammad al-Bashar, when he said, وَمَالِكٌ وَأَحْمَدٌ وَالشَّافِعِ أبو حنيفة الإمام التابعي على هدى من ربهم ورحمة والاختلاف نعمة للأمة مالك إمام مالك أحمد شافعي أبو حنيفة. All of these, they are under the whom? The guidance of Allah تبارك وتعالى. وكلهم من رسول الله ملتمس غرفا من البحر أو رشفا من الديم. People will oppose these words, but it's a fact. They all receive and sought knowledge from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They have to know that. Lakin when he said this, he said ikhtilaf is literally a blessing within the ummah. Now when it comes to education, literally, in regards to secular knowledge, and when it comes to religious knowledge, Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda mentions clearly that you have to live in accordance to your times. Even if you seek as much knowledge as you want in halaqat with the scholars, you memorize all the books, you still need the certificates. لا يستغني أحد عن ذلك. No one would be saved from this. They must receive secular, well, I wouldn't say secular knowledge, but I would say literally certificates in reality, because there's no such thing as secular knowledge. So this idea of secular knowledge has to be removed. There's no separation between the two. That's another topic for another day, actually. How would I want to delve into that? Like in what is, parents need to strike a balance. We don't want everyone to be a sheikh, but we want everyone to understand their deen. That's what's important. The profession of being a sheikh is not for everyone.
But there's a very sad mentality here in Mombasa that when your child become a sheikh, he'll be leading a poor career. Yani sheikh, imams, da'iyah are associated with a poor lifestyle.
I would like to start first of all blaming the sheikhs themselves.
Why?
Because they are the ones that built in the minds of these youth that being a sheikh is a very low life.
So what we should do to change this narrative?
Let's go back to history a little bit, all right? Sheikh Abdul Rahman al-Saghir al-Akhdari, he wrote السلم المرونق سميته بالسلم المنورق يلقى به سماء علم المنطق. He wrote the book of Mantiq, known as the science of logic. He also wrote another book known as Mukhtasar al-Akhdari, the most simplest of book, very short when it comes to the Maliki madhab for beginners. And then he wrote another book known as Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon, Imam Abdul Rahman al-Saghir al-Akhdari. It's another book. This Imam, he wrote the book of Mantiq logic while he says literally, look at how people were, they lived the life. وَلِبَنِي 21 سَنَةً مَعْذِرَةٌ مَقْبُولَةٌ مُسْتَحْسَنَةٌ. He wrote the book when he was only 21 years old. So if you find any zalla, any mistake in the book, then I take a udhr for that. I'm to be excused. And I want you to accept it from me beautifully, perfectly. He writes this while he was 21 years old. How was his life? If you read in his seerah, he was one of those a'immah that literally Allah did not keep his biography. He only has a very small biography. But what you notice that Allah has given him qabul. And because of this, we end up finding a little bit of some reminiscences when it comes to his life. His life was, he would teach for free, and he wouldn't even want the help of his students, to a position where when one day he fell into a water well, سقط في البئر. When he fell into that water well and a student came to help him out, and he didn't even know he was a student, he was about to lend his hand so that he can receive the help. The next thing that he realizes is his student said, no, I don't want to go to Allah, and Allah comes to tell me that I claimed something from my students. Understood? Then the question is, how did he live his life? He had a small business, a small kiosk that he would sell oil, he would sell some flour, he would do a little bit of some business, and students would give him gifts. He wouldn't deny that. And through that life, he was able to maintain himself. No one dictated his terms. He dictated his own life. And that's how a scholar should be. A scholar that is under a payroll, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're always going to have your terms dictated. And every time when the youth will look at them, they wouldn't see any izzah. As long as the izzah does not exist, the youth would always look down upon it.
In your opinion, what role can religious institution plays in supporting parents and families in navigating the challenge of raising children in today's world?
The phenomena or the phenomenon of institutions is not a reality. I am not telling you this out of my words.
No.
Read the book known as The Impossible State by Wa'il Hallaq. There was no such thing as institutions. I mentioned this earlier in the podcast. Knowledge is borderless. Now, if you question how could they receive religious knowledge for them to literally prosper, majority of the knowledge are in the halaqat. Sidi, go back to the masajid. That's where the knowledge is. When you see the mashayikh in the masjid, even if it's this much knowledge, that is the knowledge, but not in a university. But I would say personally, if one decides to study, then they should ask Allah for guidance for where they can seek that knowledge. Because in this era, it's extremely difficult to say, send your child here, send your child there. It doesn't work.
Why do you think it's very difficult in our today's era to get children very impressive in religious education, like staying in the mosque, getting some sermons?
كثير منا لا نأخذ المنهج الأوسط منهج النمط الأوسط. Many of us don't take that middle path. When it comes to that curriculum, nobody wants it. It's either you fall onto this side, al-ghulu, or you fall onto the side of jafaf, or jufuf. One of these two. When I say that, what do I mean? I mean, ghulu are those literally that take a path to a level where they even forget Allah. They transgress the boundaries of Allah. And then when you come to the other side, it's the side where literally these people, they've made the deen so dry that they only read it from the books, literally according to the modern standards. They read from the books, and there is no halaqat dhikr. There is no majalis with the ulama. There is no connection with spirituality. And then students end up becoming, it's either a lot of the books, and they have hujaj that they can use as evidence, or they fall onto this side a lot, and they have less knowledge, but they want to do a lot of dhikr, and they don't even know what they're doing.
MashaAllah.
You need a balance in between. So if I tell you go to that institution, one institution has a bias, and the other one has another agenda. So if you take your child here, it becomes difficult. That side, it becomes difficult. So you need to ask Allah to show you that middle path.
What advice will you offer to young people who are struggling to reconcile their faith with their lived experience, particularly in the context of, I think we've discussed this issue, and because of time, let me just take you to encourage what your advice is on the actionable steps that community can take to challenges that are facing.
You've asked me a very difficult question.
Yep.
I would answer that inshallah tomorrow in my khutbah and in my evening talk in Masjid al-Huda. In the khutbah inshallah, in Masjid Yusuf, we'll be talking about the main issues that the community, especially in Mombasa, in Kenya, what they are facing. Because the problems that they are facing here are literally problems that occurred 10 years ago, where I come from. There's a lot of issues, the feminist movement, the secularist ideology, and beyond that. So which has cause literally a divide and conquer when it comes to everything. But when it comes to simple advice that I will give, I will literally just go back again, not to the community. I'll go to the individuals who are talking about, who are asking literally, what advice would I give them in regards to how do they balance between their lives in their careers, basically, if it comes to their studies in secular knowledge, which is so-called secular knowledge, or if when it comes to their religious knowledge. Everything in life needs a balance. And where are your priorities? Where do your priorities lie? That's the question.
So let me take you to another question. How can we ensure that religious teachings remain meaningful and relevant for future generations, encouraging them to not only inherit their traditions, but also actively practicing them in a way that resonates with their lives?
There should be something that would pull them towards it, which will make their hearts inclined towards the love of religion. I can tell you, this is a fact. And we look down upon it and feel like it's just a normal thing. Yes, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he spoke about this clearly. That akhir al-zaman, when the last days of the hour, when they come by from the alamat al-sughra, is that people wouldn't want this religion anymore. This shaitan's movement, which literally we find that is the al-madrasat al-anawiyah, تسيطر عليهم, which literally takes over their minds, and they don't realize this. And the reason why I mention this is that people believe that that is the right path, while they don't know that they are jeopardizing the entire, and it's not about them, the literally generation. Something which I would mention to you simply is that the ulama, the mashayikh, the du'at, and also the families, the parents, everyone that is responsible, they need to play a role to prepare the generations that are coming to fall in love with their deen. That is key to everything. Because no matter how much you will teach the children Quran and you teach the children of their deen, but هذا لا يستقيم بدون المحبة. It wouldn't really stand without love of Allah تبارك وتعالى. That's something which is a fact. And the love of Allah would only be created if that is flowing in the community.
MashaAllah. I think because of time, it could be better if we can end right now. But I'm very sad, Ustad. I wish we could get in more and more, and I wish, MashaAllah, we could even extend your staycation here in Mombasa, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. The way you've been mentioning those books, but because of time, I think we can get back. Okay, let me get back to you once so that you can be able to goodbye our dear listeners, and maybe any last word, any advice as we sign off.
My advice that I would say is, personally, I would still go back to the parents, and I'm telling the parents clearly, it is time that everyone holds on to their child. You might be living in Kenya, especially here, people believe that it's fine. But the reality is you might be living here, and you think that because you can hear the adhan, people pray in the masjid, and these people fast in Ramadan, and around you, people follow Islam, and you think it's fine. But why do we have an ummah that does not produce in the dunya, nor is it prepared for akhirah? Ask yourself that.
Very true.
So to whom are you leaving your children? In whose hands? The community, isn't it?
No.
If the community has failed to produce men that will become responsible of their responsibilities, take over their responsibilities, and produce for their nation, or be able to become the scholars like Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, min Ahl al-Suffah, that stayed in the masjid. If they fail to do any of these, and women have not decided to be women anymore, then the parents are responsible of creating the men and the women that are expected in the next generation. If the parents do not take responsibility, and they do not start steering the wheel again, and they expect that their communities are the ones that are going to do the job for them, I promise you, there is no community on this earth that will do the job for them.
Inshallah.
It's not here, it's not in Western countries, it's not anywhere around the world. Every parent has to hold on to their child you must know whom are they hanging around with, what are they doing, what did they learn, what is it that their minds are fed. Because food and drink is easy, but if the mind is not given the right nutrients or the right nutrition, I promise you the next generation is going to be even worse than the one that we have right now.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, Barakallahu Fika. I think it will be the right time to sign off to our dear followers who have been following us from the first minute. I hope you have benefited a lot, as today we've been joined by one of the great scholars from United Kingdom. I was your host, presenter Athman. Ma'asalama, ila liqa.
Kijamii, usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhaajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko kwa Waislamu wote. Yule muhadhiri wa kimataifa kutoka jijini Birmingham, Uingereza, ameanza ziara yake rasmi jijini Mombasa chini ya kauli mbiu ya Knowledge and Ummah Building Our Future. Ataanza kutoa muhadhara wa live podcast siku ya Alhamisi ya tarehe 15 ya Februari katika studio za Alhaajar. Siku ya Ijumaa ya tarehe 16, Sheikh Mustafa atatoa hutuba ya Ijumaa katika msikiti wa Masjid Yusuf Migadini kule, na baada al-maghrib muhadhiri wetu atatoa darsa katika msikiti wa Huda Spaki siku ya Jumamosi ya tarehe 17. Usipitwe, kwani Sheikh Mustafa Mahmoud atakuwa na maongezi na wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Sheikh Khalifa bin Zaid Al Nahyani kuanzia saa 1 usiku. Kumbuka, ziara hii ya muhadhiri wa kimataifa nchini Kenya imedhaminiwa na runinga yako pendwa ya Alhaajar, na unaweza ifuatilia ziara hii bila kupitwa kwa mada zote kemkem kupitia mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Usipitwe na fursa hii adhimu. Wito, mwaliko